Hello everyone, Carlo here from AYCB, and I'm here with Dylan.
Hello.
And today we are looking at our list of top games, top 5 each actually, that we're most eager to play after the pandemic. So we're keeping the criteria for this one fairly loose. We kind of just came up with the idea and thought, what are the games that, it doesn't necessarily have to be the best games in our collection, but games that we are really eager to play with other people. So obviously we've been able to play some games online, Board Game Arena and stuff, but I don't know about you, I'm kind of missing the high player interaction games, whether it's a higher player count or games with maybe more banter and trash talk with people, just what actually brings people to the table. So the main criteria for my games are just, either, I'd say out of the 5, I think 4 of them I haven't actually played yet. One of them I've played maybe once, but these are ones that I've either had sitting there that I'm waiting to play or just eager to get back into big groups of people. What about you? Any specific criteria?
I just kind of looked at my collection and also looked at games that I didn't buy that I would have if I was playing more regularly with like 3 and 4 people, and based the list off that. So, we used to have regular board game sessions. I mean, we used to have tons of Gloomhaven sessions, but we also had regular board game sessions. And there's tons of games that I would buy thinking this is going to be great to play with 4 people or our specific gaming group, and that I just haven't been able to play. And so there's tons of games on this list, or that I thought I would put in this list that I've played that I just haven't played at the player counts that I would have liked to. I haven't played with the 4 and the 5s and stuff. So some of those fell on the list. There's games I specifically haven't bought because I know they will be shelf of shame games that sit on there, and I'll have to look at them every day and think, God, when am I going to play this game? So I put a couple of those on there. But it's basically just when all the restrictions are loosened, what can I play with 4 and 5 people that I've been waiting to do so?
Yeah, basically, if the pandemic were to end today and you had the ideal player count and your choice of players, which were the 5 games you're most eager to play under those circumstances kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to kick things off going from 5 to 1, so we'll start off with my number 5. So my number 5 is Flotilla.
Oh, damn.
So this is a pretty big game from WizKids, designed by J.B. Howell and Michael Mihalsik. Basically, I got this right before the pandemic. I have not played it yet. It is a 3 to 5 player game. It's basically, the idea is, think sort of Waterworld. It's post-apocalyptic. The big thing in the game is all players start what's called sink side. So basically in the water, and all your actions have to do with, like, there's a city in the sky, and that's kind of what you're playing off of. And at one point in the game, you don't have to, but at most one point in the game, at any point in the game, you can do it on the first turn, you can do it at the halfway point, you can do it last turn, whenever you want, you can decide to go sky side, which means that you basically flip over your board, you flip over all these tiles, all these cards, and your role changes, and now you're one of the people living in the city in the sky. And now everything that you're doing in the sky is affecting the prices of things for people who are, living sink side and vice versa. So you might have games where everyone stays sink side till like the end of the game. Someone might go sky side first turn, and depending who's where, it's playing off the economy, and you're trying to like dive for like you can get rid of what's it called, like toxic waste, and like you're just building up this city, and it just seems like a really, really cool game, something I haven't really seen before, and I've been so eager to play it. I read through the rules, and it's just been sitting there on my shelf staring at me. So
I've seen this on your shelf staring at you actually. No, really cool theme. I remember when you told me you were going to buy this, and like I knew nothing about it and looked into it and immediately was super psyched to play it, and also haven't. But again, 3 to 5 players are basically just waiting to be able to play it. So.
Yeah, it's one of those games that came out, I think, right at the end of 2019. Seems to have kind of been overlooked by a lot of people, and apparently kind of plays like Concordia, where you just kind of play a card, do what it says. But anyway, that's Flotilla. Super eager to try this one out.
Awesome pick. All right, my number 5, I don't own. So I can't pull it out, but I'm going to pull out a game very similar to it, and is part of the reason why I want to play this game so much. So my number 5 is Ankh, and we both think that's how we're supposed to say it, but if we aren't, if it's not, Ankh, it's either Ankh or Ankh, but I think it's Ankh. So I'm pulling out Rising Sun, and the reason I'm pulling out Rising Sun is it's the reason that I want to play this game so bad, and I would have bought it, I would have backed it if it wasn't for all the stuff going on. So we had a few groups together to play Rising Sun before the pandemic started. We met with the same group a couple different times. Maybe one person was different in the group. So, and I had a blast playing this game. I'm not even the biggest fan of like this genre of game that often, but Rise and Sun specifically with that group we had was just so much fun. And when none of us are all that mean to each other, but it was fun to sort of like form the alliances and break them, and it was a big laugh every time we did. I just had a whole ton of fun
I
playing
really
it.
like everyone we played with. I would say like outside of like this, like, oh, this person's like a super nice person, but then you bring to the table in this game and everyone's trash talking and backstabbing and agreeing to negotiate.
This is the game you play with the super nice people in your life just to turn them into ruthless monsters. To
see how evil they can really be. Yeah.
So yeah, Ankh is my number 5 because of how much fun I had playing with Rise and Sun, and I'm really eager to buy that game and try it out with that same group. But again, it's just not possible right now. So I owe this game for that being on my list, but hopefully at some point in the near future I'll be able to pick it up and actually get it to the table because I had a whole ton of fun with this one.
Yeah, and Ankh has that cool thing at the end where if you're losing, you can pair up with another player and try to win together as two. It's like, oh, I just got to see that
stuff is what makes those kind of games so much fun to play with a group of people and like meet with regularly, because you have that back and forth and that banter and like ribbing each other and stuff like that.
Yeah, those big memorable moments.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Ankh,
nice pick.
My number 5.
All right, now on to my number 4 game, which is The Estates. So this is another one I bought a little while back that I have not had a chance to play yet, but sounds like I think I'm going to love this game. So it's I think it was initially published as a German game. I can't remember the name, Neuhemet or something like that, and it got remade into English and published by Capstone. It's basically a game about a new urban development, and players are sort of competing. There's like 3 streets on this board, and you have these different blocks that you can put down on these little lots to basically build houses, and then you can put like rooftops on them, and there's basically like each street has a certain number of houses that it can fit, and you can put these building permits that either extend or shorten the street, and at the end of the game, any streets that aren't completed, their points count as negative points for everyone who was on that street rather than positive.
Right.
So there could be games where some points are, like sometimes all the streets are negative. Like I've heard of people winning the game with a negative score. It's just one of those games that is apparently, like the whole point of it is to be mean. It's like, it's
Do you feel good when you win with a negative score? Like is that,
well, it's,
if you win a game, this is a great question. If you win a game and you had minus 10 points, like do you leave being like, oh, I had a really good session? Or is it one of those things where it's like, I guess.
I think so. I think that'd be extra impressive. It's like you broke the game to the point where you're not being rewarded for your performance, and yet you still did better than, like, you just lost less than everyone else did, I guess.
Right, but so did you win or did you suck at the least?
We'll have to play it to see for sure, I guess. It just seems like one of those games where it's not like those games where you can be mean, but they have like this card which just like destroy your opponent's thing. I think it's a game kind of like Arboretum where you basically have to be mean. So they're almost like agreeing to this contract going into this game where it's like you're not going to be upset because someone did this thing to you, because it's like, well, why'd you agree? Like, you know what you're getting into playing this. And I've seen some people say they respect the game, but it's just too mean, they'll never be able to enjoy it. But I think with the right group, like, trust me, I'm not going to play this with certain people, but maybe with you and a couple other friends who are ready to really like, yeah, just get kind of nasty. I'm really looking forward to trying The Estates. And it plays in like 45 minutes, so even if you're upset or someone just like burns you, like, whatever, you just play another game right away.
You heard it here first. The Estates, perfect game if you have a group of friends that you're just looking to get nasty with.
Not what I meant to say. That is my number 4.
It sounds really cool, and like again, I don't know much about this. I literally know when you first got it, and I got to take a look at the back of the box,
right? And
just like the aesthetics and the way it looks is really really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm really really psyched to play it. Great pick.
Yeah, that's The Estates, and it says it's 2 to 5, but I've heard everyone say don't even bother with it at 2. It's apparently best with more players. So yeah, The Estates.
Cool. All right, my number 4 is a game that I have played multiple times, but have not played with the player counts I want. That is Hallertau. So we do have a video up on how to play on our channel for this. I'm a huge Uwe Rosenberg fan. One of my favorite games of all time is Feast for Odin, and I've played several of his other games. I know you're a huge fan of Agricola. So we played Hallertau together. I've played this with my partner. I've played it solo. I love this game. It's really, really good. I know you had a blast with it as well, and I've been like itching to play it again.
Yeah.
Again, I've only played with 2, and one of the reasons I put this on the list is because A Feast for Odin is a game I played mostly at 2 for a long time, and then when we first played it with 3, and we played it with 3 like really close together multiple times, I was surprised how much I enjoyed it as a 3-player game. I thought that, like, and I still think that, you know, when you start getting to 4, it can be a longer experience. It can drag on a little bit, but I think that sometimes for Feast Road, and I realized that 3-player count is just such an ideal thing, because you're not just focusing on one person, you're focusing on one other, but it's not too much going on that it just becomes overwhelming. And so I'm really excited to try this one, being his newest game, to see how this one also translates to 3. I think it's going to have that same kind of feeling. And everyone's you're seeing what everyone's doing with the cards, and everyone has different play styles. So I've loved this so much, so I know I'm going to enjoy it with more. And again, I just haven't been able to play it with 3 because of the pandemic. So that's why it's on my list. Hallertau, number 3.
Fantastic game. Can't wait to play it more.
Yeah.
Wait, number 4. Did you say number 3? That's your number 4.
Hallertau, number 4.
And with that... All right, now on to my number 3 game, which is another one I've not yet played. And that is Cosmic Frog.
I haven't even seen the box for this yet. It just
arrived.
Yeah,
it just arrived yesterday. So this is designed by James Felly, published by Devious Weasel Games. I honestly, every time I think about this game or try to talk about it, I just feel speechless. I don't even know where to start or how to properly convey what's even going on. Like, look, World Eaters from Dimension Zero. So the basic idea is you are a immortal 2-mile-tall frog, and there are remnants of a shattered planet, and these lands these shards of this planet have been scattered, and you, as this interplanetary frog, are trying to consume these pieces of land, store them in your gullet, and then go up into the ether to disgorge those contents back into your storage vault.
I like how you're trying to explain this game. There's no explaining this game.
And you can, like, basically it's one of those crazy, like, I've heard this guy referred to as kind of a mad genius, right? I mean, I don't think anyone has ever heard of a game that's anything like this. I've read up about some of his other designs, and they all sound kind of like just totally unique games. From all accounts, this sounds like the type of game that if you're not comfortable with a lot of randomness in your games, if you like to have control over things, you don't like to lose and feel like it was unfair and that kind of thing, maybe not your cup of tea. But if you can get into the kind of totally bizarre theme, it's very interactive. You can literally steal... Again, as your frog, you can steal land out of other people's gullets to go put in your storage vaults, and like, it sounds unlike anything I've ever played. Goes up to 5 or 6 players, I can't remember. So yeah, I just can't wait to get this to the table. I've been hearing like all kinds of Game of the Year talk for 2020 and stuff. I don't even know what else to say about this game.
The most important thing to note here for anyone interested is that this is not a toy. You can't have fun with this. This is not for playing or enjoyment. Not a toy.
Yeah, okay. Despite the crazy artwork and these frog minis, not a toy. But yeah,
I've never seen that. Maybe I have seen that in a box. I've never realized. I just find that really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, artwork's
you
amazing.
Exist to harvest the land from the shards of Aeth so that the first ones can rebuild their world. I mean,
it sounds
there's nothing out there like this.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely wild.
Yeah, so we need to find a couple people who are willing to get into this kind of suspension of disbelief and just dive right into this. So that is my number 3 pick, Cosmic Frog.
Awesome pick. My number 3 is another game I don't own, would have bought if it wasn't for the pandemic, and that is Lost Ruins of Arnak. I don't have anything to bring out to really represent this. This is a game that I've wanted since it was unveiled, and I was seeing it pop up on Board Game Geek. Literally the only reason I did not buy it is because I knew that I wanted to play it with our gaming group, with 4 people, with 3 people, and I just wouldn't get the mileage out of it. I would have wanted, it would have sat on my shelf, and I would have been disappointed that I wasn't playing
like
it.
I've been disappointed in all these games I've bought.
I'm not doing what you're doing, clearly.
You gotta get them while they're in print, in stock.
But yeah, so Lost Ruins of Arnak, for those who don't know, is a worker placement and deck building game, which are 2 of my favorite mechanics, meshed into one, which is one of the main reasons I want to play it. It also has that exploratory theme that you've seen from games like, Quest for El Dorado, Lost Cities, that kind of like jungle hunting theme. It has a lot of cool stuff going on, a huge board that it has a bunch of different options and areas for you to tackle. You're not only going to spots on the board that are the worker placement spots, you're also adding them yourself. So you can, do something on the board to add a spot that you can now go on future terms as a worker. But when you do that, guardians are sort of protecting the land, and then you have to, make sure that they don't give you, I think it's like nightmare cards or something like that. I don't know like all the rules on it, because again, it's one thing that if I look into too much, then I just get too excited and I just want to go buy it and then it's going to sit on my shelf. But I know enough about it that I know I'm going to love it. It's just, again, one of those games that I specifically enjoy playing with more people because you have more stuff going on. I know that when we played Champions of Midgard, which is another worker placement game I really enjoy, the times I enjoyed it the most was when I played with 4. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was the longest at that player count, but there was so much going on, and it was just so much fun to see like someone going over here to fight the trolls, and then these people going in, and you're competing for spots more in a worker placement game, which is a lot more, competitive at 4 players. So Lost Ruins of Arnak is absolutely a game I'm going to love and I'm going to buy the second I can play with my group, but unfortunately that just hasn't happened yet. So as soon as the pandemic's over, it's going on my shelf and onto my table.
Nice pick.
Number 3.
All right, so now on to my number 2 pick, which is the only game on my list so far that I've actually played, which is Monstrosity. So this is sort of a party game, drawing game. Came out just this past year, designed by Eric Slauson and published by Deepwater Games. This game is hilarious. We got a chance to play it just once as a 4-player game, obviously with our partners, and okay, basically the way the game works is you all take turns. Every round, one person is the eyewitness and everyone else is a sketch artist. Everyone gets a little whiteboard. There's a deck of 100 of these monster cards. They all look something like these. Like, they're just totally imaginative, crazy-looking monsters. And the idea is whoever's the eyewitness, you set a timer for 20 seconds. They draw a card from the deck. They have 20 seconds to study this monster card. Then they put the monster card and memorize as many details. They put the card down, and then they have a 2-minute timer. They cannot pick up the card to look at it again. And they have 2 minutes to explain to all the sketch artists what they saw, to describe the monster. So basically it's 2 minutes of mayhem because everyone's trying to draw at the same time and you're trying to communicate details and people are interrupt. Like, there's no rules. So one person's like, okay, it looks kind of like this and it has this many eyes and this and that and then it has these feet, and someone's like, well, go back about the eyes, and someone's like, no, who cares about the eyes? I need to know about the hands. And okay, but what did you say about it? Why does it have those arms? I didn't say arms. Like, okay, and then it's just like people interrupting each other and you realize suddenly you're a minute in and people don't even know what the shape of this thing looked like, and then you get to the end and then everyone was revealing their drawings and the laughter is just like, I don't know if I've ever seen Anna, my wife, laugh this hard playing a game ever. And then it's like other people start laughing so hard and it's just one of those contagious games. Like, this is the type of thing that we've all been missing, I think, during the pandemic, is games like this that are just like, I feel like you can play it across any age group too. This is the perfect game you could play with, like, at a family gathering with like your kids and your grandparents, because it doesn't matter how good or bad you're at drawing. I'm terrible at drawing. I did awful at this game, and I still thought it was one of the most fun games I've played in 2020.
Yeah, and now
it's amazing.
Now that you're describing it too, this is almost like completely 100% representative of the type of experiences we're missing in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, when you look at games like this or Telestrations and those kind of games where you can kind of sit around a couch and just have like a lot of laughs playing something, this is almost the game that is the best one to play first with your family or group when you first meet up for that, reconnecting and talking and everything, because the amount that I laughed trying to describe my monster in 2 minutes, and then, yes, seeing the results, but again, having the follow-up questions of someone saying like, well, you haven't really explained like where the legs are, and in my head I'm like, what do you mean? I know exactly where the legs are, but then based on how I've explained it, they have no idea. They're drawing something being like, does it have legs? Like, is it floating, right?
Or even just perspective. Remember someone said like, oh, it's like a caterpillar, this and that, and at the end we looked and some people had them horizontal, like a caterpillar, overhead. But we found out it was standing up, and we're like, I didn't know it was standing up. How am I supposed to know? And you realize at the end, you're like, oh, I didn't describe this properly. And it doesn't feel like one of those games that sometimes people say these kind of games can feel more like an activity than a game.
Right.
This actually feels like a game, and it's just like, it's something you really do get better at, how quickly you can explain things. And I just can't wait to play this with more people. I can't recommend this enough. I believe I saw on the designer's Twitter a while ago that this is in Target, so if you're somewhere where there is a Target, go check it out. That's Monstrosity. Hilarious, absolutely so fun game. Amazing pick. Really good pick.
My number 2 is a game I do own, but I'm not going to pull it off the shelf because it's just too complicated to get off my shelf. So it is Gloomhaven, but hear me out here. I've played a lot of Gloomhaven. The only reason that I specifically am putting this on the list is because we had been meeting for 2 years or a year and a half before the pandemic, regularly, whether it be bi-weekly, monthly, completing our Gloomhaven campaign, and we were on to Forgotten Circles. We were quite honestly on the very last session we needed to meet to do the final boss of Forgotten Circles and completely wrap up our entire group's Gloomhaven campaign. We were going to have a
done the base game,
yeah, done the base game. We were going to have this huge break before Frosthaven came out, and then the pandemic hit. We were one session away from finishing. Because of how long this has lasted, at this point when we meet up, it's probably going to end up being to complete that and already be looking ahead to Frosthaven, if not diving into it. So for me, this represents meeting up with that Gloomhaven group again, also kicking into Frosthaven, and just being able to wrap up a year and a half or 2 years of a campaign and of us regularly meeting. So there's so much symbolism there too. Definitely. It means so much to us. I'm just excited to get that game back to the table to finally put a bow on it, and then that'll lead us into Frosthaven, which is again one of my anticipated games.
Question for you though: if Frosthaven were to arrive and we still weren't done that campaign, by the time we get to it, would you be able to resist the whole like?
Oh man,
would we force ourselves to go back and be sitting there playing Forgotten Circles, kind of like looking at the corner of eye at Frosthaven?
I feel like we'd have to. I think we have to. Right? We beat the final boss of Forgotten Circles and then we move on to Frosthaven. We can't.
Yeah, I know.
Otherwise, we'll never properly wrap up that like 2-year campaign.
I know. Just the thought of getting Frosthaven and being like, I'm going to put this on the shelf while I play something else seems crazy, but I know. I hear you.
Yeah, no, it's it means a lot either way. So that's one I cannot wait to finally wrap up. And again, part of me is also thinking it kind of represents jumping to Frosthaven, which is one of my most anticipated games. So number 2, Gloomhaven, and finishing that campaign.
All right, so we are at our number 1 game each. So the number 1 game I'm most looking forward to playing post-pandemic is Hansa Teutonica Big Box. So, I mean, even just looking at the cover on the front, this probably looks nowhere near as exciting as all the games I just talked about, especially Monstrosity, this hilarious game. But this is one of those games. I've had the original Hansa Teutonica on my list of like to-buy games for like a couple of years. It was out of print everywhere. It was just kind of one of those games I couldn't find, but I knew I wanted, so I kept hearing, oh, they're going to do this big box version. So I just, like, when it came into stock, I had to pick it up. I knew I wasn't going to play it right away. It's 3 to 5 players. There's tons of people who say this is, like, one of the best Euro games around of the last, like, decade or so. Plays in about 30, 45 minutes. With experienced players, but it's a game of basically network building where you're trying to have contracts and establish trade routes from one city to the next. But you've got you've got a certain number of actions every turn. You can use them to either bump people out of places they've already been, kind of worker placement style, or you can upgrade actions on your board. So there's an idea of like the more actions you take placing your stuff on the board, you're not upgrading your ability to take stronger actions, but if you spend time upgrading your ability to take better actions, then when you do take those actions, you have bigger effects. And there's just a lot of player interaction on the board. Plays super quick. By all accounts, I just think like once this is said and done, we've played this, I have a feeling this is going to be kind of up there in my collection. It's one I've read the rules to multiple times and just can't wait to play. It just seems like one of those absolutely classic Euro games, despite the typical sort of frowning, disappointed, middle-aged white man on the front kind of thing that so many of these boring-looking boxes have. But
is board game? Do you think board games is the only medium where we can do a list and the number 1 game on a list for whatever it is can feature a man like with a quill, like writing, like signing legal documents or like charting some stuff on a piece of paper here, and it's like the most exciting game on a list for us.
That's what I'm talking about, right?
Could you imagine a video game like top list for PlayStation 4 or something, and on the front cover is the guy like just like signing his name on a document? Like what is
that's
this?
The thing. I struggle to even put this as my number 1 because I'm like, people who don't know the game,
the game's gonna be fantastic.
I know. But like, and even just hearing you talk Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, I'm like, this is a tough sell now. Yeah. It's one of those, I hear typically, it's always people say like, it's the most like brown looking, generic, boring looking game that everyone overlooks. And even the title is like Hansa Teutonica. What does that mean? It's trade routes and contracts. Yeah, it kind of sounds boring, but I don't know. It just seems like it's got that level of player interaction and kind of.
It's the same thing with like Castles of Burgundy being one of my favorite games. In the front of that box is like the least exciting box art you can imagine.
That typical certain style of Euro game where it's only going to pull you in and convince you to play by how boring it looks, I think.
Completely. Agreed.
So that's my number 1, Hansa Teutonica Big Box.
Great pick. I can't wait to play it too. All right, my number 1, you might have already guessed it because you probably saw it disappear on the shelf behind me. It's probably in the frame. This is probably not going to fit on the table, but it is Title Blades, and this box is gigantic. I'm only going to keep it up here for a second, otherwise you're not going to see mine and Carlo's faces. So Title Blades is, here, I'm going to lay this down. is a game that I've played, and I played it a few times, but I played it only with 2 players. And specifically, one of the reasons I'm putting this on is because when you play with 2 players, there's sort of a dummy player added in. It's called the rival, and even though you're playing with that other person, you're both competing with this rival. Now, it still played great. It was still lots of fun to play it that way. But any game that I've played where you have to add in a dummy player like that, usually to substitute for another human player, because that's the ideal player count, ends up just sort of being not falling flat, but it's just not living up to all it can. So this game specifically, I had so much fun with, and I know that at 3 and 4 players, I'm really, really gonna have a blast, especially because I know with our group of friends how much they're gonna appreciate the theme, the artwork, the asymmetrical powers, and just like trying out different characters. That it's just one I am itching to put in front of people, and I just haven't been able to. I think we're probably going to play it at some point 2 players, because I just can't wait any longer.
Yeah, I've been eager to try it.
Yeah, but as soon as we can play it with 3 and 4, I think that's when it's really going to shine. So again, I also got the deluxe version, so all the components are really fantastic, and I want to show them off to everyone. But yeah, so I've played it. It's just haven't experienced it to what I think is probably its full potential. If you haven't played it or you haven't checked it out, I would highly recommend it. We have a How to Play on our channel that you can check out as well. But yeah, component quality is fantastic. Artwork's fantastic. The asymmetrical powers are all different enough, and you don't get them all every game. So you'll have like a deck of cards, and depending what you're drawing, one game you might see these powers. There's characters I haven't even seen half their powers because I just didn't draw them in the games I played. So every time you can play with the same character and still feel like you're creating a different build. You can play with a different character and go a completely different route. They all have their strengths. There's even an expansion character, a 5th character that I didn't get, so there's even more you can experience with it. It even says part 1 on the bottom of the box, because this is a world that they're going to be expanding on. It might not be in the same style of game, but there is already an RPG being developed for it as well. I saw that on Twitter the other day. So they are trying to expand on this world because it's so deep and so beautiful and everything. So Tidal Blades, number 1 on this list. It was also on my list for top games of last year. I'm a huge fan of this game. You guys probably figured that out by now, but I cannot wait to introduce more people to it. So.
And look at this guy. He goes and covers up maybe my number 1 game that I picked is probably the ugliest one of the 10 we look at, and you go covered up with this like gorgeous
seascape,
absolutely beautiful production.
Not? Yeah, it's fantastic. So
nice pick. Nice pick.
Thanks. So that is my number 1.
So that is it for our list of games that we are eager to play after the pandemic. We're curious to hear what you thought. What other games have we missed? What do you recommend that we play after the pandemic?
Yeah, let us know what the game that is sitting on your shelf that you are just dying to play with a bigger group, and you've been waiting until it's safe to do so. I would love to know like which game, like you can just tell us the one. I'm just so curious.
Tell us which game
everyone's
and why.
Game is.
What's the reason? Is it something that you want to just laugh with people? Is it something you're missing the trash talk with your friends? Let us know below. Otherwise, that's it for us. If you like this video as well as other videos we're doing, consider liking, subscribing to our channel, and or tell a friend about us. Otherwise, that's it for us, and thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. I did some weird hand thing there.
I'm gonna zoom in on it.
I went to wave and I just went like this. I did. My fist is good. You gotta edit that out. There's no way.
Is it because you saw me do this?
Yeah, I think I looked over and I went to and I was like too late to grab, so this went. So maybe after you go like this, it's just gonna.
No, I'm gonna zoom in on your fist, and we're gonna focus completely on that. I'm gonna put this footage in so people get context to what's going on.
Okay, as long as there's context.